top major AEW name will step away from active in-ring competition in 2024 and will finally retire. Matt Riddle cries sexual assault after landing at New York's JFK airport with the rest of the WWE talent and staff after India's Super Spectacle. Matt Riddle is in some major hot water right now, potentially with the WWE. And speaking of hot water, Gable Steveson may have seen his last days in WWE. His future is absolutely uncertain and will be determined by Vince McMahon himself. All this plus so much more right here on OTS today for September 11th, 2023. We'll start with Gable Steveson. If you guys remember, he wrestled not too long ago on his first major PLE for NXT as he stepped in the ring with Baron Corbin on basically what was a match that was built within 1 week's time frame. Gable Steveson's future with WWE and NXT is up in the air as he recently withdrew from this month's Senior World Championships and was removed internally off the NXT roster, only to be used at 2 NXT house shows just this past weekend. Now, earlier in the summer, the Olympic gold medalist beat Baron Corbin, which I just previously mentioned, in his in-ring debut at the Great American Bash. This was in Austin, Texas. Last week, it was revealed that Steveson is no longer competing at the tournament in Serbia, as heavyweight wrestler Mason Paris will replace Steveson. Steveson has to get approval from WWE to do these amateur wrestling tournaments. Now, on Friday and Saturday at the NXT Live events, he went over Dante Chen. Now, while speaking on the Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer noted that Steveson's situation is not only weird right now, but his overall future depends on Vince McMahon, who has taken a step back from spinal surgery. Meltzer says, and I quote, "He worked 2 shows this weekend that was coming off from Wednesday when he pulled out of the World Championships. It's weird because originally they had him pegged as the next Kurt Angle or Brock Lesnar. Obviously, that has to be reevaluated. He's got a great deal coming off of winning the gold medal, as he was expected to be the next Brock Lesnar," says Dave Meltzer. But, you know, he was going to debut on the main roster in a big way, and now he's wrestling Dante Chen in Florida on the NXT house show circuit in front of 200 people to get ready. His trajectory has changed greatly, but he is there and not trying for the amateur championships. I don't know if he's going to be back on TV soon. I know a week ago they had no plans for him. A lot depends on his situation, and a lot depends on this regarding Vince McMahon. Until Vince comes back, I don't know if we're going to know a lot that's going to happen with him because his situation is going to be a Vince decision. And if Vince isn't back, then Triple H is in charge and everything like that. But it's the big picture. He's got an uphill climb right now. Now, I don't know if you guys watched the Great American Bash match with Baron Corbin. I tried to be as fair as possible. He did do some things good. He did do a lot in that match that went terribly wrong. And the one major takeaway from the entire situation was the crowd reaction to Gable Steveson. I mean, these people were watching a Baron Corbin match, and we all know how Baron Corbin has been presented on television. A match with Baron Corbin and Gable Steveson, and within the match, we were getting "Let's Go Corbin" chants. And Gable Steveson was being booed out of the entire building. Now, one thing I picked up on is that WWE thinks they got the makings of the next Kurt Angle. They don't have the next Kurt Angle anywhere, and I don't think they'll ever have the next Kurt Angle. There is only one Kurt Angle, so when you put lofty expectations and hype on somebody, it is always going to fall flat, especially when you're comparing that someone to a Kurt Angle or a Brock Lesnar or a Shawn Michaels or whoever, the next Undertaker. None of these superstars will ever have the next, iteration of these certain superstars. It's just not possible. And the other thing that was working against him, fans don't forget. The NXT fans, they're not the same fans that they were in Full Sail, but the NXT fans that come to the PLEs, they clearly like the product. And I would say that they're more smart mark, hate that term, but it's true. They're more smart mark than the main roster casual audiences who are nothing more than families and kids and, a nice night at the arena to watch some good old WWE wrestling, These fans in NXT, they are a little bit more smarter than the average fans, I would say. It's not really giving them a lot of credit because they're a bunch of idiots. But they're not going to forget. And Gable Steveson was accused of sexual assault and rape himself. So why does WWE think that his debut, all because he's an Olympic gold medalist, is going to go off as a success story and go off without any problems? Fans are not going to forget. And if it's this bad already and shit's already being uncovered again while he's on NXT, what do you think that's going to do when he makes the main roster? It's going to be uncovered more dirt will be put on his name, WWE will have a PR nightmare. They're better off just cutting this guy loose. I mean, he's already been in the system for how long? And he's not where they need him to be? He's obviously got other priorities. So if he wants to go do amateur wrestling and he wants to do that for the rest of his career, then have him go do amateur wrestling. He's clearly not cut out to be a WWE superstar right now. I'm not saying that he's not cut out ever, but clearly he's not cut out right now. But the one big thing that's going to be following him around no matter where he is, especially in a mainstream market with WWE, he may be able to hide it on the amateur circuit and do what he needs to do. But if he makes television, if he's on social media, if he's doing PR, if he's doing interviews on NBC and ESPN and SportsCenter and Sports Illustrated, none of this shit's ever going to go away. So what is WWE left to do? If Vince deems it a PR nightmare, listen, Vince McMahon's not in charge. After tonight, Vince McMahon's not in charge anymore. Ari Emanuel's in charge. This may not even be a Vince McMahon thing anymore. Who's to say this guy's going to be with the company when Endeavor takes over? They may just end up cutting their losses here and cutting him loose. It's nothing more than a fucking problem child. That's just the way I see it. But that Great American Bash match with Baron Corbin was everything I needed to see. I don't need to see any more of Gable Steveson. I mean, they drafted him to Monday Night Raw, and he's on fucking NXT wrestling Dante Chen on the house show circuit for 200 people. Yeah, what a next Kurt Angle that is, huh? Give me a fucking break. Speaking of sexual assault, from one to the other, Matt Riddle. Matt Riddle claimed sexual assault after police were called about disorderly person who turned out to be Matt Riddle. There appears to be more to this story. This happened at JFK Airport earlier on Sunday morning. Matt Riddle took to Instagram the night before to make claims that he was sexually assaulted while at JFK Airport in New York City. Riddle also posted a photo of the officer who he said committed the assault. Nothing like being sexually assaulted by an officer and harassed at JFK Airport. No means no. And just because I'm nice doesn't mean yes. Wow, that sounds very similar to what was going on with Candy Cartwright, if I'm not mistaken, where Matt Riddle was accused of sexual abuse and sexual assault a couple of years ago while he was ousted in the Me Too movement. I mean, it's the pot calling the kettle black here, isn't it? No means no. What about the other victims that came out and said the same thing about you? Now he wants to cry wolf. No means no. And all because I'm a nice guy, that doesn't mean yes. Asshole, he says. Don't know if they're on Twitter or Instagram, but I took pictures. Normally, I'm like, whatever, but today was really weird and uncomfortable. And they made a point to make me feel small and useless. Oh, man, this is priceless material, man. Definitely one of the most uncomfortable travel days I've ever had. Thanks, New York City. You're so progressive and so accepting. End quote. Riddle later deleted this post and then said, finally leaving JFK, I never want to come back here again. Now, TMZ is reporting that law enforcement sources say that Port Authority officers received a call about a disorderly person who was deplaning, and that person turned out to be Matt Riddle. According to witnesses, Riddle reportedly seemed apologetic when he was speaking with the police, and no police report was filed. Port Authority says that they were shocked about Riddle's claim on Instagram, and from their view, nothing they did warranted an accusation from Riddle on social media, but because of the post, they're taking the claim seriously, and they are launching an internal probe. Now, it was reported that Riddle was drunk and he was doing antics while drunk here. So I don't know what the real story was, but I do have a lot of questions in regards to this situation. Now, I know the flight is about 19 hours going and coming from India. The WWE travel schedule this past weekend to make it back to the States for Monday Night Raw was absolutely something I would never want to endure. So kudos to them for doing what they got to do. Hopefully they were paid and rewarded handsomely. But if Matt Riddle, this is what I don't understand. Matt Riddle's a part of the Monday Night Raw brand. Was he with the rest of the roster? Was he with the talent, the staff, the crew? I'm assuming on these types of flights, WWE has some sort of manager or someone on the managerial staff to watch everybody and make sure everybody's comfortable. They got some sort of handler there to make sure that nobody gets into any business or any situations like this. So where was the person in charge here? Why was Matt Riddle, as it came off in this Instagram post, it seemed like Matt Riddle was flying rogue. Was he flying with the rest of the talent? Or was he flying by himself back to Florida? Was he getting on a connecting flight from JFK to Florida to go back home because he's not going with the rest of the staff and talent to wherever Monday Night Raw is? I mean, I have these questions. Why was he allowed to be, if he was drunk, why was he allowed to be drinking so heavily and at such high volumes if WWE had someone there to watch everybody on their best behavior? I don't really understand this story. Like, where was everybody else? Why was nobody watching out for him if he was intoxicated, like the report said? I don't understand it. You know, this is not a good look for WWE. With him going on social media and taking things into his own hands, now there's a bigger investigation being probed and launched, and it's not going to really make him or the WWE look good, especially if the WWE by tomorrow afternoon is going to be finalizing a sale with Endeavor. It's not really a good look on the first day of the company being sold to Ari Emanuel and Endeavor Corp. I mean, none of this really is a good look for anybody here. But again, it goes back to Matt Riddle. Matt Riddle is a problem child in himself. Nobody's going to want to deal with this type of behavior. And Matt Riddle's got all the talent in the world. Matt Riddle is a fucking great professional wrestler. But no matter how great you are in the ring, this behavior is always going to catch up to you. He's never going to assume the throne in WWE. He's never going to reach higher than he is right now because of his problems and his antics. They sent him to drug rehab, and he went to drug rehab for 30 days. So much for the fucking alcohol and drug rehab. If he's getting drunk on a fucking flight coming back from India when it's work. I don't get it. It's almost like he's self-sabotaging his career. On top of all the other fucking problems that he's got, you know, he's not right in the head. I'm sure he's not right in the head. He's been disassociated from his family. He's engaged to a porn star who he just got pregnant. I mean, this is the lifestyle, clearly. I'm not going to say, you know, and this is his lifestyle. This is what he wants. That's his lifestyle. That's what he wants. But this is not something WWE should really look at and say, hey, this is our next guy. We're going to do more with him on television. Clearly, he doesn't want more on television. He wants to live the lifestyle he wants to live, and he wants to be who he wants to be. It's up to WWE to see that, and Matt Riddle to be okay with it. He's not going to amount to anything more than where he is right now. It seemingly looked like Randy Orton, when Randy Orton was there, that he kept Matt Riddle in check. You didn't really hear these problems when Randy Orton was on TV and they had RK Bro running all over Monday Night Raw. It seems like Matt Riddle right now seems like a lost puppy. Maybe we need Randy Orton to get back if he wants to associate with him again. You know, Randy Orton had similar problems like that when he was early in his career. Maybe he's the type of guy that could reel Matt Riddle in and bring him back down to earth and really sit him down and talk to him about what really is important, your family and your career. Right now, if Matt Riddle continues to go on this string of behavior problems, the only thing that's going to come his way are burials on TV. And WWE will never take him seriously. So I don't feel sorry for him whatsoever. If he's drunk, I don't know where the fucking rest of the WWE staff was. I don't know why they're not flying together. I got a whole bunch of questions here, but this is not a good look for WWE He's crying sexual assault. He's obviously being memed on social media now because everybody's saying pot calling the kettle black. You are crying about this situation, but what about the rest of the victims that cried out when they called you out? Not a good look. It's not a good look. Matt Riddle with this latest stunt kind of just dug up everything previously that was a problem for him, and now it's just piling on top of him one after the other. Speaking of the Superstar Spectacle in India, WWE and staff apparently had a very rough travel schedule. John Cena teamed with Seth Rollins to beat Ludwig Kaiser and Giovanni Vinci of Imperium in the main event. Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, and Drew McIntyre defeated Indus Sher, Veer Sangha, and Jinder Mahal. Drew McIntyre, he was not a part of the show. I do believe he was there, though, because he was interviewed and he mentioned something. I reported something about some publication in India asking him what his next steps are going to be. Is he staying with the WWE? He gave a very politically correct answer. Also, there was an Intercontinental Championship match, I believe, with Shanky and Gunther for the IC title. So Shanky is still employed, believe it or not, with the WWE. And Jinder Mahal with Indus Sher. We thought that they were going to take the tag team titles from Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. Thank God that did not happen there, being that this was just merely televised for India and India only. But they lost the tag team championships to Judgment Day at the last pay-per-view, so we didn't have to worry about that. And the Great Khali apparently says he has one more match left in him. I don't know who would want to see that, but that doesn't sound like a good idea at all, if you ask me. PW Insider's reporting that the crew went to the show and had to return to the United States in time for tonight's Raw. This was a very rough travel schedule for the crew. They were told the trip was pretty rough, in that it was in the area of 19-hour flights each way, with the talents landing, going right to media interviews, performing live, and then heading right back to the airport to make it back in time for Raw. So if you see any sluggish behavior on Raw, you know why. Although it was an exhausting schedule, they were told that the atmosphere live was absolutely insane and loud in terms of electricity. So there you go. And finally, guys, Bryan Danielson announced on Collision. Jesse and I covered Collision, believe it or not, on Saturday night. It was a very fun podcast. Go check that out on the channel if you guys want some extra content from the podcast. Bryan Danielson announced on Collision that his days as a full-time wrestler are winding down. He promised his daughter that when she turned 7 years old, that he would be home, and she is already 6. So next year, May, she will be turning 7. Danielson previously talked about this during the all-out media scrum after their last pay-per-view. Sports Illustrated today cited multiple sources saying that Danielson would step away from full-time wrestling, and going forward, he would appear as a special attraction, a role that the names such as Edge and The Undertaker were slotted in during their final years in the ring. Also, during this segment, Danielson called his shot, announced that he would be wrestling Zack Sabre Jr. at their new pay-per-view concept, AEW's that is, called Wrestle Dream in Seattle, which is Bryan's hometown. He was also attacked by Ricky Starks and Big Bill, so that storyline is continuing with Starks as well. If Bryan said it live on air and it has to do with a personal situation like his daughter and his family, I'm going to believe Bryan Danielson, and I'm going to believe that this is his last in the ring anyway, his last year in the ring as far as an active competitor in AEW. And I do feel like he will be used as a special attraction. I don't think he's going to retire completely, but whatever he's doing now, it's going to be cut more than half. And I'm okay with that, as long as we get some sort of Bryan Danielson on TV. But I'll tell you what, man, this next year, appreciate what Bryan brings to the table, because right now it is arguably that Bryan Danielson may be the best in-ring performer in all of pro wrestling. You can make a case for MJF, absolutely. You can make a case for Will Ospreay. But Bryan Danielson, man, if this is his last year, you expect absolute, if he stays healthy, expect absolute bangers anywhere that he ends up. Seriously. So if this is his last year, you know he is going to absolutely put himself through the ringer, and we're going to get some matches that you didn't think were even possible with Bryan Danielson joining AEW. So it's going to be a fun year for Danielson. And like I said, being that he said it live on air, where Danielson comes off mostly unscripted anyway, he's like a free bird. He does what he wants. I do believe that if he did say that on Saturday night, that we should take him very seriously, and this will be the last full in-ring career, or last in-ring as far as Bryan Danielson is concerned for AEW in that squared circle. So it's going to be a very interesting year as it pertains to him. I'm looking forward to it. Anytime Danielson's on TV, you got my attention, and we should expect some great pro wrestling from Mr. Danielson for the rest of the year and on into 2024. And then obviously he will take a step back and he will do a lot of administrative work for Tony Khan. Tony Khan's already stated publicly that if he was to go away and the company was to be sold or something was to happen to him, Bryan Danielson would be running the company. So it puts a lot into perspective of Tony Khan. Out of everybody in that company, the elite, even when Punk was there, it says a lot about Bryan Danielson and what Tony Khan thinks of the human being Bryan Danielson. So it's going to be a very interesting year. I'm looking forward to what Bryan brings to the table. Guys, thank you very much for all your support on the podcast. It's been an incredible month of September. Let's keep the ball rolling. I will be live tonight with the very last Monday Night Raw of the McMahon era as we are looking at Endeavor finalizing a deal to merge UFC and WWE tomorrow afternoon. I will be live on the podcast after Monday Night Raw right here on OTS. Hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe button down below, turn on the bell for notifications, and go check out all the other content on the channel. There is plenty of it for you. Until tonight, guys, I'll be live right after Monday Night Raw right here on Off the Script. I'll see you guys later.